In ancient Egypt, a story unfolds that was never written on scrolls made available to the men of today. It is the story of forbidden rites, stolen children, and one survivor whose life would become the greatest mistake of a certain pharaoh.
Setka was 14 years old when he was kidnapped. That night, he and his younger brother, Nesed, were asleep on a mat beside the fireplace when the dogs began to bark. At first it sounded distant, like any other night sound, but then the shouting came. Heavy sounds struck the ground and firelight rushed through the walls of the house. Before Setka could rise, rough hands grabbed him. Nesed screamed his name and clung to his waist, but another hand tore the boy away. Their mother's voice cried out once, sharp and broken, before it was swallowed by the noise. Outside, the village was already lost. Houses were burnt down and men lay beaten. Their women were held back by spear points while the children were dragged from every corner, some crying, some frozen in fear. Setka and Nesed were bound at the wrists and pushed forward with others. They were forced into a long wooden wagon mounted on thick rollers. The soldiers used iron chains to link their ankles together so no one could run. Guards walked beside them with whips and spears, shouting in the name of Pharaoh Nekaru. As the wagon moved forward, Setka lifted his head. That was when he saw Iru, his best friend. He stood only a few steps away with blood on their lips. Their eyes met but neither spoke. Around Iru were other children Setka knew from their village. Some of them were badly hurt. As the wagon moved along the Nile River, Setka's hometown burned lower and lower, until it was only smoke against the stars. That was when the truth settled in Setka's chest, heavy and cold. Their land had been raided and their families destroyed. From the chants of the soldiers, he knew they were taken by the order of Pharaoh Nekaru. But he didn't understand why. Pharaoh Nekaru was a feared ruler who descended from the race of hostile creatures. His kingdom was known as the Plains of Ammonius. It was known for tall walls, loud temples, and endless hunger for power. Nekaru ruled it with an iron hand. He was a clever, patient, and cruel ruler who believed the gods had hidden a greater strength inside the land, and that only he was wise enough to claim it. Deep beneath his palace was a sealed chamber under which lay the emerald stone, as bright as a green leaf under the rain. The elders of the land of Egypt said the emerald stone was not meant for men. It was a forbidden force that was never touched because it carried strength that demanded a living body to hold it. Before the reign of Nekaru, a law was made and no one was to touch it again. Nekaru broke that law. He believed the stone could be forced to obey if the body was shaped the right way. So he began to steal children. Soldiers were sent beyond Ammonius borders at night. They struck small towns that were too weak to fight back. He demanded for children because their bodies were still growing and can be forged like iron. Sons were taken from fathers and brothers were torn apart. The first rituals failed. The children were brought into the stone chamber and laid on cold slabs. The emerald stone was placed against their skin as the pharaoh's personal magician Sao spoke incantations. The stone shone with a strong green light, bright enough to hurt the eyes. When it touched the children, the light spread across their skin like fire made of leaves. Some children cried and cried until no sound came out anymore. Others froze, their eyes wide, their bodies stiff, as if fear had taken their breath away. Their bodies were too weak for the stone. Some of their arms bent the wrong way, their legs shook and most of their bodies were left disabled. Some children forgot where they were and who they were, staring at nothing, lost inside their own heads. The green light faded little by little, like a dying flame, until the stone went dark and heavy again. The guards came quietly after and lifted the children, and carried them away burnt as charcoal. Every day, children were carried out dead or unable to move. Nekaru was not moved. Each failure taught him something. He commanded Sao to change the words of the incantations, to adjust the signs. He added iron to the rite, heating it until it glowed and pressing it into the flesh of the children to prepare their body. He kept children awake for days, believing fear sharpened the spirit. He starved them, then fed them herbs that burned the tongue and clouded the eyes. Still the rituals kept failing. As weeks turned to months, the failure count grew, but so did Nekaru's knowledge. He learned how long a body could last and the difference between cries of death and that of change. The ritual became slower, darker, and more intense. With every child lost, the pharaoh smiled less and watched more closely. By the time Setka, Neset, and Iru were dragged through the palace gates, the emerald stone had tasted many lives. The guards whispered that Pharaoh Nekaru was close, very close to his creation. Life was difficult in the palace. The children were kept in a wide stone hall with no windows, only torches that smoked and burned their eyes. At night, the cold crept up from the floor and into their bones. Some of the children cried until their tears dried, while others desperately offered prayers. Setka held Neset, his brother, close when he slept, listening to his brother's breath just to be sure he was still alive. Every morning, guards entered and dragged one child out of the hall, leaving the others terrified for their fate.
One morning, the guards dragged Neset out of his brother's grip. Neset grabbed his hand in panic and cried out loud. A guard hissed and pushed Setka away from his brother. The last thing he heard was Neset's cry as he was dragged down the corridor, his small feet scraping the stone. The echo of his voice stayed long after he was gone, and Setka waited that night, refusing to sleep or eat. He counted every step in the hall, waiting for his brother to return. But by morning, Setka understood that his brother was gone. The hall grew quieter as children vanished. Fear sat on their chests, heavy and constant. Then one day, Iru was taken. Setka had no grief left in him. Their eyes met in silent goodbye, and Iru cried silently. When they brought Iru back, the guards did not walk him in. Instead, they threw him outside the prison hall, awaiting orders. When Setka looked at Iru, he noticed his legs were bent the wrong way and one of his arms was burnt beyond recognition. Iru's mouth opened wide, but only air came out. His eyes found Setka, full of terror and shame. He tried to crawl, clawing at the floor like an animal. The guards finally pulled him away into an iron cage outside where the sun was hard. Iru lay there all day and the sun burned his skin. Flies gathered around him. His lips moved again and again, begging for something: water, mercy, death, but none came. By nightfall, his body stopped moving. Setka did not cry anymore. The fear in his heart had become something else. Now he was determined to survive the Emerald Rite no matter what happened. The day Setka was taken, he was brought before the pharaoh himself and forced to kneel. Setka lifted his head and met the eyes of Pharaoh Nekaru. The room was silent, and in that moment, something inside Setka hardened. He did not know how or when, but he knew clearly that he would kill this pharaoh. He was dragged into the chamber of the Emerald Rite and stripped of his clothes. The air was thick with heat and bitter smoke. Sao stepped forward and pressed a bar of burning iron against Setka's chest to test his ability to hold pain. Setka did not scream, but his eyes burned red with pain and rage. He could not stop thinking about the pain his younger brother suffered. The Sao pulled the iron away, surprised. The emerald stone was brought close. This green light spilled over Setka's body. This time, something was different. The stone did not reject him. Instead, part of it softened, like wax near fire, and sank into his skin. The light pulsed faster. The pharaoh leaned forward, his breath caught in excitement. Setka's body shook in response to the powers of the stone, then he suddenly went still. One of his hands was blackened and twisted, burnt beyond shape. His chest no longer moved as the stone went silent and stopped shining. Pharaoh Nekaru straightened, anger replacing the hope he felt. Setka's body had reacted so well, but now it was all useless. He waved his hand and ordered the guards to throw the body away. When the guards took his body away, they did not bother to look at his face. To them, he was already dead. They dragged him beyond the palace walls and threw him onto the cold ground like spoiled meat, then turned back without a word. Setka's eyes opened first, not fully but enough to let light in. He could feel the green light beneath his skin, beating like a second heartbeat. His body shook as the emerald power moved through him, burning and freezing at the same time. He tried to scream, but no sound came. His fingers dug into the dirty ground as pain made it hard for him to breathe. That was when he saw a wooden cart nearby, loaded with heavy logs to be transported out of Ammonius. It was already being pulled toward the outer road when Setka crawled towards it. When he reached the cart, he pulled himself inside and buried his body beneath the logs. Inside the darkness, Setka shook violently. His chest heaved as emerald light leaked from the cracks of his skin, lighting the wood around him in sickly flashes. His body fought the power, and the power fought back. By the time the cart rolled away from the palace, Setka was no longer certain what he was becoming. The cart crossed into Kush just before the morning came. The driver stopped near a small trading yard to sell off his goods. He climbed down, stretching his tired back, and began to unload the logs he had bought cheaply from Ammonius. As he pulled one log aside, something soft shifted beneath it. He froze in shock. There, stuck between the wood, lay a boy. The man stepped back in shock. The child's skin was marked with dark burns and strange scars, some twisted and half-healed, others still raw. One of his hands looked wrong, as if it had once been burned beyond saving. His chest barely moved. "Dead?" the man whispered. He knelt slowly, unsure whether to touch him. The boy looked like something left behind after a fire outburst. The man's name was Tarek, a wood trader who lived a quiet life far from palaces and gods. He had seen wounded soldiers before, but never a child like this. As he leaned closer to Setka, his eyes opened wildly with green light exploding from them. Tarek fell backward, scrambling away as the light spread under Setka's skin like living veins. Tarek stood in shock as his bones fixed itself and his flesh pulled together. His twisted hands straightened and air rushed violently into his lungs as if he were being dragged back into the world by force. The wood dealer watched in terror as the child healed before his eyes through the bright green lights shooting from his skin. When the light faded, the boy lay still again, alive. Tarek did not run. Instead, he stood shaking, staring at the impossible thing before him, and made a choice that would change his life. He lifted the boy carefully and carried him home before the sun rose high enough for others to see. Tarek's wife, Nala, was waiting when he arrived. She gasped when she saw the child, not out of shock, but because she recognized the powers inside the boy. Nala was not Egyptian, but her grandmother had once traveled through the lands of the north and learned fragments of their magic, old prayers, forgotten symbols, and stories never spoken aloud. From her, Nala had heard of the forbidden Emerald Rite, a power sealed away because it could not be owned by kings. There was also a prophecy from the stories she heard. It spoke of the spirit man who would not be born of gods, but through the cruelty of the leaders of Egypt. It was said that when a ruler more cruel than evil itself rises, his end would not come by armies, but by the hands of the one it tried to control. Nala had always believed the prophecy was only a warning meant to scare rulers, until she saw the green light beneath Setka's skin. They hid the boy in their home, not sure what to do with him. For days, Setka drifted in and out of sleep. When he woke, he was unable to speak to anyone, for he was still in shock from his experiences at the palace of Pharaoh Nekaru. His eyes followed every movement around him, and he flinched at sudden sounds.
Nala helped keep him calm and soothed the powers within him using the little knowledge she gathered from her grandmother. The couple did not press him with questions of what happened to him, but they gave him water and food and shelter. Now, Tarek and Nala had a young daughter, Saini, who watched the boy with quiet curiosity. She often brought him bread and sat near partaking in his silence. At first Setka kept his distance, only nodding or shaking his head when she spoke. But slowly, he allowed her presence and smiled at her sometimes. Nala started teaching him control in small ways. She drew symbols in ash on the floor. She taught him how to breathe when the fire tried to break free, how to pull the power inward instead of letting it spill out. Her teachings were not enough to help him master his powers, but it was enough to stop him from losing control and burning their house. Setka soon fully joined the family of Tarek. He worked where he could, used his powers to cut wood for Tarek and followed him into the fields and learned how to plant and harvest. He often joined Saini and Nala to sit and eat, talk and play. He tried to live as a normal boy and treated Sani like his younger sister. But danger did not stop just because Setka wished for peace. Soon, Nala's efforts to help him control the power began to fail. The emerald fire inside him grew restless, sometimes showing without warning. Setka could no longer hold it the way he once did. He grew so restless that at night he began to sleepwalk. They would find him standing outside the house, barefoot in the dirt, his eyes glowing faintly green. His hands trembled as if he were holding back something vast and heavy. Other mornings, he was found several steps away from home, unmoving, as though he had been drawn there by the fire itself. Sometimes the ground beneath his feet felt warm. Sometimes nearby would blacken and smoked, as if touched by unseen flame. Setka did not remember these nights, what he did or how he did it, but each morning, the power felt stronger and harder to deny. Tarek's family stayed kind to him, waking up early to find where he might have sleepwalked to, covering the green traces he left behind when they could. Nala believed she was helping an old prophecy come true, and so she tried harder to find solutions to his problems. However, after a month, the land of Kush was attacked by bandits who stole livestock and people's valuables. This kept happening until one night Setka rose from his mat without waking anyone. As if pulled by something he could not see, he walked into the darkness. No one saw him follow the thieves into the fields, but by morning they were all gone. The people of Kush woke up to a shrill cry coming from the fields. When the people gathered, they found the bodies of the thieves melted together with their weapons. The stolen items were left unburnt, but every other item owned by the raiders was melted into thick wax and there was green liquid everywhere. The people began to whisper that they had seen similar green prints close to their homes and on road paths. Rumors began to spread of the mysterious fire that melts humans and iron and of the bright green stains left on some road paths. The rumors did not stay in Kush. They crossed the desert and reached Egypt. Pharaoh Nekaru sent spies to confirm if it was true. They returned with the truth that the boy was alive. Messengers were sent at once. The messengers came with gold and fine cloth, enough to sustain a few hundred people a long time. They said the pharaoh promised safety, favor, and peace if the boy was handed over to them. When Nala refused, they also let her know that it would take Nekaru nothing to bring the whole of Kush to ashes. In panic, she convinced them that such a choice could not be made in daylight, and that she would give her answer by morning. That night, the house was silent. Tarek blocked the doors and Nala lit no fire in the house. They sat with Setka on the floor and listened as they spoke in low voices. Nala and Tarek told him to run, to cross the desert before morning. They asked him to disappear beyond the reach of Egypt and that of the pharaoh. Setka shook his head. He said the emerald fire would always betray him, that the pharaoh would never stop hunting him down, and now that Kush knew about him, it wouldn't take a while before other kings begin hunting for him too. If he ran, more children would be taken and made to pass through the horrible pain of the Emerald Rite. When the couple tried to beg him further to escape, he said it was finally time to put a stop to Nekaru's wickedness. He advised the couple to take the gold and gifts the messengers brought, that the gods had blessed them for keeping him safe and helping him. After a while, they agreed on what must be done. Nala crushed bitter roots into his drink, not enough to harm him, only enough to quiet the emerald fire and drain his strength. Setka drank without hesitation. When his hands began to tremble and his vision blurred, he lay down as planned. By the time the soldiers arrived, he could not stand. The messengers were satisfied and believed that Nala had betrayed Setka. They left the gold behind.
As Setka was taken back toward Egypt, weak and bound, his eyes met Nala's one last time. She did not cry then. She bowed her head in respect. The prophecy was about to come to pass and she had helped it happen. Nala felt privileged. When Setka was brought before the pharaoh, he commanded Sao to examine him carefully, to mark his skin and check if he truly held the power of the emerald stone. Sao confirmed what Nekaru already believed, that the power was still in the boy. Pharaoh Nekaru ordered that the emerald fire inside the boy be tested, measured, and shaped into a weapon. Under the supervision of Sao, guards were brought before Setka, one or two at a time. They were told to stand still while Setka was ordered to strike them with the emerald fire. When he refused, the sow sprinkled a substance meant to hurt him. Setka cried out in pain, and he instantly understood that he had to hurt them, or be hurt even worse. The first time he obeyed, the emerald fire burst from his hands in a wild wave and struck a guard in the chest. The man fell, the iron shield on him melting into his skin. The smell of burnt flesh filled the court. As Setka struggled to breathe through the harsh air, he saw movement beyond the chamber doors, and he knew instantly that children were still being captured and killed during the Emerald Rite. Setka knew he had to act faster. If Nekaru stayed alive, more children would die and Egypt would never be freed from this cruelty. So he began to feign obedience to every word the pharaoh said. After that day, Setka did not refuse again. When Nekaru commanded, he obeyed. When Sao tested him, he endured it in silence. He lowered his eyes and kept his hands still, forcing the power within him into control. Nekaru believed he had forged the most perfect weapon and didn't waste time to utilize it. He ordered him to strike the enemies of Egypt, using his powers to threaten other kingdoms into submission. Setka did so cleanly and without excess. He left no chaos behind and no witnesses either. Nekaru began to relax and trust his weapons, believing that his punishments were working on the boy. However, Setka used that moment to plan. He began to slowly learn when the guards changed shifts and when the children were brought down into the chambers below. When Nekaru planned to take over the east coast, he announced a 3-day fortification rite to strengthen Setka before sending him off to break that distant land that had refused Egypt's rule. The rite would seal more of the emerald fire into his body, tighten his control, and bind him further to the pharaoh's will. Setka was dragged into the chamber of the Emerald Rite in heavy chains carved with ancient symbols. Priests circled him, chanting incantations as Sao stood close, his hands shaking as he prepared the spell. The emerald stone was lifted above Setka, glowing brighter than it ever had. Although he was in pain, Setka did not fight them. He knew the moment had come where they would bring destruction unto themselves. He knew the emerald power was not just inside him, it was him. When the binding began, the chains tightened and burned into his skin. The priest spoke words meant to tighten the power inside of him. At first, the emerald light poured out of Setka like a flood, shaking the ground, and went in a straight direction toward the stone. But suddenly, the power broke free. Emerald fire exploded outward, catching anything on its way. Priests were torn apart where they stood. Sao vanished in a flash of green light. The emerald stone shattered, breaking in the middle, unable to hold what it had already given away. Through the smoke and falling stone, Setka tore his chains and ran towards an already fleeing pharaoh. He reached Nekaru in a heartbeat and pulled him close in a tight embrace. The pharaoh screamed as the fire poured into him. It did not kill him quickly. It peeled away his flesh, stole his voice, and erased his name from the world. Setka walked through the ruins untouched by the fire. In fact, he was stronger than he had ever been. He ordered the guards to free the children and destroy the Emerald Chamber. When he had set the people free and punished all the elders who joined hands with the cruelty of Nekaru, he left Ammonius. Although he wanted to go back to Nala and Tarsek, he knew his presence was only going to make the couple suffer and bring pain to Sani. So he went far away, refusing to settle down anywhere. Setka walked the world as a weapon with no master. Kings sought him out in secret and paid heavily for his service. When Setka accepted a contract, wars ended quickly. Enemy walls melted and armies scattered before battle could even form. He struck fast, with precision and no mercy, and left nothing behind but victory. His name spread beyond Egypt. Strong kingdoms took notice, and with his powers, kingdoms formed alliances. He did not stay in any court or kingdom for long. He took his payment and moved on, refusing titles and loyalty from any great man or king. He belonged to no throne. Ages passed, and his fame was still circulating even when he was no longer seen or heard from. Some say he still walks between kingdoms, taking gold, ending wars before they begin. Others whisper he is no longer fully human, that the emerald fire is slowly shaping him into something older than humans. And those who know nothing of the old prophecy still argue this to this day. Was Setka a monster born of forbidden rites, or the punishment the world earned for turning children into weapons?